Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'm very happy to meet my old friend, Mr. Narang, today after I don't know whether 3 decades or 4 decades. I am very happy to meet him. Honorable Principal Dr. Samir Sharma, Convener Sri Vikram Singh, who is the Dean of EMA, Co-Convener is Nidhi Sood, esteemed academia and students. It's a very nostalgic moment associating with some institution placed at Mukeria. Because I have worked at the grassroots level in this region where the Mukeria is for almost 2 years in the most troubled times that the Punjab experienced, 1984 to 1986. It's like returning to the Karam Bhumi. So the moment I got an invitation from Principal Samir Sharma, I think I didn't take even a minute to say yes. Secondly, I'm humbled by the introductory remarks about me. It's a custom and a tradition to usually exaggerate the accomplishments of the resource person. And I am also a victim of that. Very frankly, I, from the core of my heart, wanted to be an academician in life. But unlike the generation today, we were a very obedient generation. And the parental pressure and the grandparental pressure and whatnot forced me to take these silly examinations which select people for the Indian Administrative Services and other services, and I had no option but to get through and serve for the various governments for almost 4 decades. That gave me a lot of exposure, multidisciplinary exposure, handling education, higher education, medical education, technical education, law and order, information technology, agriculture, irrigation, finance, planning, and whatnot, without making me a specialist like the academicians become. One of the grudges of my life is that I have not been able to do a PhD and hence not entitled even to step into the territory of the academia where PhD is the basic qualification. And why I could not do it was that most of the universities now insist for an entrance examination, which is basically not possible for a person like me who stopped his academic studies 4 decades back. But anyhow, let us start with the topic of the day. I've been told to deliver my talk in English, though there is a caveat that some of the students here might like me to speak intermittently in Hindi or Punjabi also. But going by the directions of the coordinator, I'll be speaking mostly in English. Now, the subject of the day is human values for sustainable future. It's a very wide topic. When I started looking at it, I didn't know from where to start and where to end. Whether I should emphasize upon what is sustainable future, what are the goals of sustainable future, or should I emphasize more on the values part of it? The study of this topic became absolutely interdisciplinary. from ecology to environment to economics to agriculture to industry, labor, then global conflicts, dispute resolution, ethnocentric behavior, biases, prejudices, racism, apartheid, what not. It became very difficult for me to exclude various aspects of the subject from the overall framework that I wanted to make in my mind as to how to go about the subject in, say, about an hour or so before inviting questions. So today's lecture will be more or less a loosely knit thought process which will come to you in natural course. Everyone knows what is sustainable future. Sustainable future is like we live our present in such a way that we allow the future to live the same way or happily still in a better world, in a better society, in a better social milieu, family. And we do not deplete the resources that have been given to us by nature or by our predecessor in life to the extent that we starve the future generations from living a decent, wholesome, happy, fruitful, and purposeful life. Now, it's a very wide subject. And before I start, I would very briefly give an account, an audit of what we have done in my generation, Mr. Narang's generation, because there's the academia also, and there are students also. I would first start. I'll give some pluses and I'll give some negatives. What we have done, what has been our behavior, the behavior of my generation towards having a sustainable future for the next generation. Fortunately, we have two generation participants in this, the students and the faculty, and maybe slightly elder one like Mr. Narang and me. First of all, my generation needs to apologize to the next generation on certain counts. We have not been able to give to the future generation unpolluted water, unpolluted air. We have not been able to give them that pure water which they used to drink from the wells, from the hand pumps, or directly from the taps. We have failed there. We have also lagged behind in giving them ease of living. Most of this generation is rattled in carving out a comfortable daily routine. We have created processes which has complicated their lives. Most of their time and energy and positivity is consumed by the useless procedures, useless certifications, useless affirmations, visits to multiple offices, lack of online access to services, which should be a routine. Though we have made an effort, but we have not left the next generation with quality time by taking care of their daily lives. We have not been able to give them a society which is free of ethnic biases, a society which is by and large free of caste discriminations, a society where minorities have not been made to integrate happily with the national mainstream. We have not been able to give them the desired degree of infrastructure. We have not been able to give them the world-class institutions of higher education. And we have not been able to give them employability and employment. If there is employment, the youngsters are not employable. And if they are employable, there are no avenues of employment. These are the failures and many others of my generation. On the other hand, we have done our best to give you certain things which you would appreciate. I started when I was a student in the school or college, there were no cordless phones, there were no computers, there were no mobile phones, even transistors were not there, only one brand came in 1970s. There were no air conditioners till the late 70s. There were no desert coolers till early 70s. There were no fuel-efficient cars. There was no internet, which takes 5 to 6 hours of the present generation's time. There were hardly any roads. From Hoshiarpur to Chandigarh, even I had to cross 7 big chos as deputy commissioner where there were no bridges. And tractors used to be deployed to pull out the deputy commissioner's car when it used to get stuck in sand. That was the infrastructure. But now understand what type of highways you have got, what type of trains you have got, what type of airlines connectivity, Udan. You have an airport at Pathankot, you have an airport at Adampur, you have an airport at Amritsar, you have an airport at Dharamsala. Just see, within 2 hours journey from Mukeria, how many airports do you have today? When I was a student, there was no Ranjit Sagar Dam. Incidentally, I was present when its foundation stone was laid, and I was present when it was inaugurated also after so many years. Bhakra was there. There were no thermal plants. All the thermal plants, which has made Punjab and most of the country power surplus, have come during my generation. So there have been pluses and minuses. Now, I asked myself, have I given a better life to the coming generation? Or have I not given them a good life? Now, this is very personal. Now, coming to the society, coming to the national issues, coming to the global issues, in totality, where are we facing the hurdles? Why are we lagging behind? What ought to be done? And for that, what type of human values should we have? What type of mindset should we have? Is it purely materialistic, a mindset confined only to the present, to the core, to cater to the core selfishness of the individual at the present? Will that, as a value base, bring a more sustainable world in the future? No, obviously not. So in that context, I want to say a few things. Rather, I would agitate your minds to think on these issues, and then we can discuss about them. I will not emphasize mostly on the academic chronology. Now, every one of you, I'm sure would have known that it was, some people say, Nikola Tesla, the great scientist of the 20th century, who's considered to be the father of sustainable development, because in the year 1900, while conducting his energy experiments in the Colorado Springs, he declared that the renewable energy and energy preservation is going to be the need of the 21st century. And this he came to a conclusion in 1900. This was, and then, the definition that the principal Sharma Sahab gave, that we have to meet our needs without compromising the ability of the people in the future to meet their own needs. This is Brundtland definition. And he was a former Prime Minister of Norway. His full name was Gro Harlem Brundtland. He chaired the World Commission on Environment and Development Commission and gave his report in 1987. This report was published by the Oxford University, and the title of the report was Our Common Future. Our Common Future. So from then onwards, the attention of the world turned to ecological and environment preservation. So we have to save the planet. So the United Nations and other agencies turned in, and there was this Rio de Janeiro conference of 2012, and in 2015 the United Nations chalked out the Sustainable Development Goals. Earlier it was the Millennium Goals, and these goals, broadly, I won't take much time because I expect the academia to know, so I don't have to, teach academics to the academia. But I will very briefly, for the benefit of the students who are listening, I'll very briefly just mention the 16, 17 goals that have been shortlisted. Number one, there should be no poverty. They are non-controversial, admitted, agreeable goals. Number two, there should be zero hunger. Number three, there should be good health and well-being. Number four, there should be quality education. Number five, there should be gender equality. Number six, clean water and sanitation. Number seven, affordable and clean energy. Number eight, decent work and economic growth. Number nine, industry, innovation and infrastructure. Number 10, reduced inequalities. 11, sustainable cities. 12, responsible consumption and production. 13, climate action. 14, life below water, that is marine. 15, life on land, like all humanity, wildlife, etc. Then we switch over to peace, justice, and strong institutions. Then the last but not the least, a universal partnership for attainment of these goals. Now, this is the type of sustainable future that we envisage for the future. There has been a success. The under 5 mortality rate has fallen. Access to electricity has increased. All countries have come up with their national policies for ensuring a sustainable future. They have started contributing also. Then the international organizations, businesses, local authorities, and scientific communities, they have all been enlightened about it, and now they participate and convinced that it is our obligation. But there are huge challenges. The challenges, I would just read a few lines to summarize. The natural environment is deteriorating at an alarming rate. Sea levels are rising. ocean acidification is accelerating. The past 4 years have been the warmest on record. 1 million plant and animal species are at risk of extinction. Land degradation continues unchecked. So there are 28% people have severe disabilities. Then more than half of the world's children do not meet standards in reading and mathematics and other subjects. So we have a big challenge. We don't have to underestimate it. And preserving the future, a sustainable future, cannot be left only to the governments. Like most of things we actually do. We want the governments to save us by enforcing a lockdown, imposing curfew and using the police. Why? Because we don't want to save ourselves and we don't want to do. So what I'm emphasizing is that creating or having a sustainable future world cannot be left to the governments alone. It has to come from within the core of the heart as an attitude, as a value, as a moral, as an ethic from every human. Because the governments represent their people and people get the governments they deserve. And the governments are bound by their answerability to the people. So therefore, for tackling the huge issue of bequeathing a sustainable future to the next generations is seriously everyone's problem. Now, the attitudinal change, I would take the non-ecology factors first. Can we have a sustainable future if we build up huge defense infrastructure? The world has been divided politically into various countries. The humanity has been divided. And to protect our boundaries, every country is spending billions and trillions of dollars and rupees to raise big armies, buy costly fighter jets and bombers, have radar systems, have intercontinental ballistic missiles and interceptors. And it's a madhouse. It's a rat race. It's an industry. Conflict creates and perpetuates and helps the defense production industry. Can we do something to have effective organizations of dispute resolution? Can we reduce the degree of international conflict? Otherwise, how will our future be sustainable? Earlier, there was a conventional war. Then it came to a nuclear war. Now it's the biological war. I don't know whether this COVID-19 is man-made or natural. I don't know. But let us realize what a simple, small virus can do to the humanity. 3-4 lakh people have died. Many more could have died. We are at the virus's mercy. Do we need to have these dangerous biological labs, if at all they are there, for achieving military goals? Do we have to use this biological warfare as a weapon of destruction? Do we need to sit on the stockpile of nuclear bombs, nuclear warheads? Do we have lakhs and lakhs and lakhs of soldiers waiting endlessly to fight a war? Now we have the global institutions, the United Nations, this and that. They are old. Most of them are defunct, not ideally representative. They are the monopoly of certain powers which were the real powers when these institutions came up, and they are not dynamic in nature, and they are not changing their structure to be absolutely representative according to the changing times. New economic powers, new military powers, new cultural centers, new hubs of trade and commerce are coming up, and they have no representation. There have been an accusation of their being unfair and partial, and therefore their utility as dispute resolution bodies has come down. The other day, there was a happy news that we are there in some executive body of the WHO, but that is at a time when most of the world is disowning the WHO. Now we are elected to the United Nations Security Council for 2 years, starting 1st of January 2021, and the election will be held on the 17th of this month. And today the Indian Foreign Minister has flagged certain issues which are also very important for the topic we are discussing today. What does India foresee as challenges in the context of United Nations Security Council? Increasing strains in international governance as frictions have risen. This is a admission of the failure of the United Nations Security Council for dispute resolution, for minimization of conflicts. Unchecked traditional and non-traditional security challenges. Now, non-traditional security challenges are huge, as I discussed, the nuclear, biological, this, that. And then some of the powers are pursuing their economic interests under the garb of military aggression. Then unreformed and underrepresentative global organizations, the point that I was just making. There has to be a serious performance audit of all the global organizations. As on date, they are old organizations. And unless they are appropriately representative organizations, they will lose their utility to the future world. Then grave economic repercussions from COVID that will test the world like never before. Now, how do we say that COVID is the first and the last virus that will hit us? Yes, we have been, those of you who remember the 1918 Spanish flu, this thing, in Hoshiarpur district only, I'm giving you the figure which is relevant. In 48 days, 24,800 people died. There were lakhs and lakhs and lakhs of deaths in Punjab and India and the world. Exactly almost 100 years back. Yes, now there's a race. Attacks on humanity and vaccines, drugs, this, that. Can we afford to lose the race? Now we are coming up, build up your immunity, live a better lifestyle, go over to yoga, breathe fresh air, and do this, do that, close to the nature, back to normal eating, eat food, don't eat animals, birds of such categories which bring in, horrible diseases to the mankind. So these things have to be seen. COVID will leave the world poorer and crippled. 1.6 billion people are affected by the lockdown all over the world. That is 76% of the informally employed people are unemployed. And global economic output will reduce by 15%. 265 million persons are at the risk of starvation because of this pandemic today. And global GDP will go down at the rate of 2% every month, that is 24% annually for some time due to the lockdown. And we are in the middle of it. It's not the past. Our systems are so brittle. Our systems are so superficial that we are moving ahead like a hovercraft moves on water without touching the water. These are not sustainable foundations on which our economy is resting. Just in 2 months, people are starving, people are dying, people are moving, people are dying. We suddenly realize that building memorials and renovated buildings and lavish, unproductive expenditure has no place in a civilized society. What we need is health infrastructure. What we need is education infrastructure. Just we have started counting how many ventilators do we have. We have started counting how many ICU beds do we have. We have started counting how many doctors do we have. We have started counting everything. We had forgotten about this earlier. The percentage of expenditure on health sector and education sector was the most compromised decision making, because very unfortunately, these are the two sectors where the beneficiaries don't stand up. They are unorganized. And it is something in continuation. It doesn't give the thrill of ribbon cutting as it happens for the new project and different projects. But now, I think we'll have to turn around and refix our priorities of public expenditure, even in the families, in the society. Even the private expenditures shall have to be rationalized. I have studied economics, and I feel everyone who studies he feels that his subject is very relevant. But I feel that from a beggar to Ambani's, to the government of India, to the government of America or whatever, everyone has his own private economy. How much of our expenditure is wasteful? How much of our expenditure is productive? Yes, we take consolation in the fact that we spend crores of rupees in marriages, which sustains the marriage industry. Absolutely rubbish. Because in economics, we have to see every unit of expenditure should bring the highest multiplied productivity. It should not go to a certain sector or a community only to fill up their stomachs during the day. We cannot eradicate poverty by just giving subsidies, putting food into the mouth of the people, giving them free this thing, free that thing. We have to provide them the ladder, the wherewithal to climb and jump across the wall of poverty. So there comes the role of skilling. Our feudal mindset has to change. This value has to go. If we are rich, 10% of our income we are squandering. We are distributing blankets. Or maybe we are getting an existing school whitewashed. Or much more than that, a farmer in Rajasthan, his father is toiling on his barren land, earns some money, and the boy, instead of buying a tractor, buys a jeep and rides across. You see the entire Malwa in Punjab. There was a time every boy had a jeep, and his key of the jeep was in a key ring, and he was rotating it on his little finger. That was a status symbol. I mean, what type of reinvestment into the production stream are we doing? Now, coming to values once again, I want to say a few things about our industry, entrepreneurship. Why is it that the Tim Cook and other entrepreneurs say that even if we want to come over to India for production, it is impossible because India doesn't have that type of a production base that China has. There are no ancillaries to produce high quality, high speed equipment, which is required for making the final product. The boys and girls more or less are unemployable because the standards of engineering education have gone down, barring a few very respectable institutions. Every third person working as a PN or data entry operator is an engineer, so-called engineer from some teaching shop. Then I have been to China a number of times. At 9 a.m. there is a whistle, there is a siren, like we have for our curfews. The entire industry immediately starts working. Every man engaged in production and every labor, human resource, wears a dangri, wears a helmet. It is not necessary that the next generation is as efficient as the father has been or the grandfather has been. The Indian industry is suffering because of certain internal inefficiencies. When the next generation joins or takes over, and the industry is run in a non-professional manner, and the funds are siphoned off from productive stream to luxury, then we cannot compete with the efficiently run industry in terms of pricing, as well as in terms of speed of production and quality of production. We keep on blaming China and other countries for selling their goods in India. If we can't make the goods that we need, someone will sell them here. So another thing that we need to inculcate in our character is efficiency. A laborer has to be efficient, an entrepreneur has to be efficient, academician, officer, politician, everyone has to be efficient, having all the skills that his or her profession requires. Efficient and productive. Easiest thing to do is to blame the government. We don't do research because we don't have funding. We are not making profits because the government policies are not very encouraging. But what about your own internal inefficiencies? What about the amount that you take out of the production stream and spend on luxury? Anyone I meet says that we are undergoing a lot of hardship, but the entire family visits Switzerland 3 times in a year, and they ride in cars of 1 crore, half crore, this crore, that crore, and still they say that we are in great trouble. This is inherent inefficiency. The same is true of the government, the same is true of the administration, governance, everything. We are becoming an inefficient and unproductive country. That is why Make in India is not succeeding. That is why our children have lower comprehension levels in maths and other languages. I went to a high school in Fatehgarh Sahib. Everyone knows Fatehgarh Sahib as Sikh history. And it is a place where there was martyrdom of the Sahibzadas. In the history class, I asked questions relating to that very incident, and the class could not answer them correctly. The teacher was present there. Now what do? Nothing. We have to have an inner urge as a teacher, as an administrator, as a politician, as an entrepreneur, as a farmer, to be very productive and efficient, cost effective, competitive, ruthlessly, ruthlessly efficient. Now the farmers are not working. In America and Canada, all farmers, the farm owners are also working along with the labor, if at all they have to employ for the work in excess of what their family can handle with the machines. Here, there are absentee landlords and there are landless farmers. The landlords who have the money and the education to modernize agriculture and to create infrastructure and mechanization, they don't do it because they just keep on removing the cream that comes to the surface. The farmers, the landless farmers or uneconomic holders of agricultural land do not have the money to modernize agriculture, even to buy seeds. They work themselves. They take land on thikka, contract, pay to the landlord. What for is the landlord? Is it agriculture? Accepting the rent of the agriculture land, is it agriculture? No. And let us compare our agricultural productivity with the agricultural productivity of the advanced countries, including China. The answers will not be far to seek. We are putting more and more and more of pesticides, fertilizers, this, that, just to optimize or maximize our agricultural income without putting funds for diversification. Now, the result is yesterday there was a news that these big companies like Nestle and this and that, they are reluctant to buy the cereals grown in Punjab because very heavy toxic content in that. Now, I'm giving you the groundwater example. Half of Punjab is a desert. There is no groundwater. And the other half is waterlogged. All rivers have been diverted to the west. All rivers are flowing into the Indian Ocean via Pakistan and this and that. Now all our canals emanate from the west banks of the river and water goes to Malwa, or that area. There, because of scientific reasons, the further movement of subsoil water has stopped because of better rain underground, and it has become waterlogged. Now, I am worried, what are we going to bequeath to the future generations there? What will they do? The water is floating all over. So, I have painted a very grim picture. Government of India on its own has really taken a solemn vow to give a sustainable future, to work for sustainable future. There's Samagra Bharat, Saksham Bharat, inclusiveness, Satat Bharat, sustainable India, and Sampanna Bharat, prosperous and vibrant India, and so on. Now, by 2050, the world population is expected to reach 10 billion. And 70% of that is likely to be in the cities. Now, what type of cities are we having? Now, in our city planning, what do we do with the floating population? Because all avenues of employment are in the cities and there is an imbalance of infrastructure and employment in rural as well as the urban areas. So therefore, the people have to migrate. Why people migrate in India so far? Everyone goes from a little small pocket of UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, etc. to production centers. Bengal people go to Gujarat. UP, Bihar goes to Maharashtra, Punjab, everywhere. We'll have to create production zones all over the country so that the migration route is shortened. And as far as possible, create production centers in the rural areas. Also, the gap between the rural and the urban area infrastructure and other facilities will have to be reduced. Now, the values. What are values? Values are foundation of person's ability to judge between what is right and what is wrong. So I don't think there's any two opinion about the fact that we need to have a sustainable future. There's no controversy about it. Then what should be our ethics?